The Italian Wine Podcast is the community-driven platform for Italian wine geeks around the world. Support the show by donating at ItalianWinepodcast.com. Donate €5 or more and we'll send you a copy of our latest book, My Italian Grape Geek Journal, absolutely free. To get your free copy of My Italian Grape Geek Journal, click Support Us at ItalianWinepodcast.com or wherever you get your pods. Grazie mille.
Welcome to this special Italian Wine Podcast broadcast. This episode is a recording off Clubhouse, the popular drop-in audio chat. This Clubhouse session was taken from the Wine Business Club and Italian Wine Club. Listen in as wine lovers and experts alike engage in some great conversation on a range of topics in wine. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinepodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. And remember to subscribe and rate our show wherever you tune in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Clubhouse Ambassadors Corner. So today is our 135th episode on Clubhouse. So we've been doing this for around more than 2 years now. So that's really amazing. And for today, we have Tanya Morning Star, and she will be interviewing Luca Formentini from Selva, Capuzza of Lugana. So, hi, Tanya. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Laika. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here from Seattle.
Wow. What time is it now there in Seattle?
It's 8:33 in the morning.
Oh, good morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for making time and, doing this Clubhouse early in the morning. So, yes.
I'm drinking coffee, not wine.
Okay. Disclaimer. Disclaimer, we got that. Okay, so I'm so happy that you're back. I remember you interviewed Donatella and also Riccardo Cottarelli as well before. Those are very amazing guests, so thanks so much for introducing them to us. And now we have Luca Formentini. Before I give you over the floor, I would like to introduce you again to the audience. First, Tanya Morning Star is a full-time wine educator with 3 decades of experience. Her school, Cellar Muse, is the approved program provider for Wine Scholar Guild certifications. She holds many high-level certifications. She is an approved WSET instructor of L1 to L4 curriculums. Also an Italian Ambassador of Bourgogne Wines, is it correct?
Yes, I'm an Ambassador of Bourgogne Wines, exactly.
Bourgogne, okay. I was like worrying if it's French or Italian word and I didn't pronounce it right. Bourgogne.
I dabble in French wine too, yes.
Okay, and also official Champagne Educator. She's also the official Global Educational Ambassador of Orvieto Wines, a Vinitaly Academy Italian Wine Ambassador, and was awarded French Wine Scholar Educator of the Year. So through her studies, Sorbonne and New York University, coupled with her extensive independent research and travels, Tanya became interested in the intersection of food, wine history, and cultural identity, representing the fulcrum of her work. She has taught wine history at the college level and online for 11 years and has created a dynamic online wine history course focusing on the Old World. She leads joyous, rigorous, immersive educational food and wine tours in Italy and France, and is also proud to be a mentor and an industry leader of D&I. Today, why did you select Luca Formentini?
Luca is definitely one of my favorite producers. And I'll say that in the time that I've known Luca and his wines, I've witnessed Luca and his tireless commitment to community and our planet. I often say that wine is a collaboration of people and nature over time, and Luca takes responsibility for his place within that, which I really, really love. He's a champion of both preservation, protection, and experimentation, which is what I really embodies for me the best that we could be, actually. So that means he's not pedantic in his approach. One great example is that his winery was named Most Sustainable Winery in Italy by the important Italian publication Corriere della Sera. But his winery doesn't have an organic certification, so he doesn't seek to follow any dogma when it comes to validation for his quest to make authentic wines of place. And this is this is what attracts me, really. He's an advocate for preserving grape varieties and traditions. And as I mentioned before, he really takes responsibility in a very thoughtful way in that quest. One thing I'll brag about him, although I could brag about many for him, since he's a very humble person and probably won't. He was instrumental in the creation of one of Italy's smallest DOCs, or the preservation and creation of San Martino della Battaglia, which is completely encased within the Lugana DOC area, but features a different grape variety that I think we might talk about a little bit later. And so he's humble, he's inquisitive in pursuing his imagination towards respect and curiosity in his work. So those are values that I really align with. I could go on, but those are
Yes, I am actually very intrigued now to really listen through your conversation later with Luca, because of the reasons that you have are really deep, actually. And also, I wanted to understand later, like his philosophy in terms of his winemaking, and also in preserving his vineyards as well. So I wanted to ask, when was the first time you tried his wines?
I was trying to remember the date, but I think it was about 8 years ago. Luca, at the time, I was teaching at a local enology college, and he was traveling through for, I don't recall exactly, maybe it was some kind of trade event, and he taught a masterclass at the college where I was faculty. And so I had a chance to taste his wines, and I'm going to tell a little story later about how from that day I discovered something surprising about Lugana wine a couple years later. So I'm going to put a ... there.
Okay.
I'm happy to say that, 8 years later, we find ourselves still in conversation around what identity in Italian wine means. And that conversation that's been going on for these years has been influential and important to me. And next month, I'm bringing 15 curious scholars of wine to his area, and we're going to stay at his property and have that be our home base for an exploration of the wines and appellations that exist around Lake Garda.
Wow, that's amazing, and that's really nice. And let me know how it goes. By the way, before I proceed to give you the floor, since we also have our ambassadors here, of course, I know that they're very geeky and they want to know more about the learning objectives of this conversation.
So really what I want to do is I want to share Luca with you guys and his special perspective. And really that's it. So I'm going to ask him questions that pertain to his philosophy and perspective around winemaking and being a human being and how those things connect.
Okay. So yes, now I'm going to mute myself and I leave the floor to you and Luca.
Okay. Hi, Luca. Ciao.
Yeah. Ciao, Tanya. Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me here.
I'm so happy that you are here, and I want to introduce you formally so that people can understand a little bit more about you and set that up for understanding your perspective and your work. So Luca's winery, Selva Capuzza, is in the Lugana DOC, but he produces several different appellations of wine. Luca is also a music composer who I admire quite a bit, in addition to being a wine producer, who has followed his family heritage through his business, which is actually on a very historical site for the history of Italy. His activities are focused on a strong interest in relationship to the natural environment, and this connection and how it really surrounds us as people and our inner life. So the natural environment connected with our inner life. This attitude has brought him to connect with sustainability since the beginning of his professional path in the wine business. And as a concept, also that informs his approach to his music. So those things are connected. As a wine producer, he's dedicated always part of his time to serving with associations in the protection and promotion of appellations and territories. We know that those as the Consorzio di Tutela, right? So the wine boards of Italy. So he served for 2 terms, I think, if that's, correct me if I'm wrong, Luca, as the
You're
president of the Lugana Consortio. And during that time, actually, I watched Luca very tirelessly devote himself to that work. His wines have many awards. They're delicious and vibrant and energetic, each in their own unique way, in my experience. And he's known for engaging in philosophical debates around nature and wine, and in particular around infrastructure. One example would be, so this is, political debates, in fact, around the high-speed trains, for example, and their impact on the fragile territories, and how farmers should regard biodiversity as a productive tool. So Luca's engaging as a culture maker, as I would put it, in his community, and a promoter of circular economy, or a holistic and individual approach to sustainability. So this is Luca. Welcome.
Well, Tanya, thank you so much. I hope that I will be able to meet the expectations that your word have created. And but thank you for having touched the most important parts of my journey in the wine production and in the wine business. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with a short question, and it's a very open question, and you don't have to. You can answer it in long form, or you can just pick a couple of words. It can be kind of like a tableau painting, or it can be lyrical, so to speak. But what would you say if you could pick an element that is the most rewarding for you in your work in wine? What is an element that is the most rewarding for you?
I would say that I had the luck to meet many important and very rewarding times during my I think it's 30 and something years I'm doing this job, and they're all related to the way that wine can give a positive result on the landscape, on the nature that surrounds us. So whenever I have the feeling that what I do can give something good back to the land, which allows us as winemakers to produce our product, I always feel like this is the most important thing that I can get from the work I'm doing. So it can be encouraging my colleagues and encouraging my staff to be more sensitive when it comes about sustainability, trying to find new ways and personal ways to make it in play, to make it work, or trying to preserve, because I very much like when you, Tanya, told these two words, which is on one side the protection and on the other side it's the experimentation. These are really the two poles which create the energy which is behind what we are trying to do at Selva Capuzza. So to answer to your question, whenever what we do brings a positive result to the place, then I feel that we're doing something good. This is creating the energy that I need to do this job every day. Of course, selling a bottle of wine is essential, but it's not enough to make me want to wake up with the kind of energy that makes my contribution in the wine world more deep and more meaningful, I think.
Excellent. I think that's going to set us up to have some fun with the next questions. So Luca's winery, Selva Capuzza, is located in the Lugana DOC, as I mentioned. And so I want to talk about Lugana first. And so I guess along the line of your commitment and relationship with nature, I'll ask what your philosophy around interacting with the specific nature of the terroir of Lugana would be, and how, I guess the second part would be, what does the DOC mean to you within Lugana, and how does that help you to express your point of view? So your philosophy around how you interact with that terroir, and then how the description of that serves you and your point of view in winemaking.
First of all, let me tell you that I think I was really lucky to have my family's company settled in this area, in the Lugana area. Not just because it's a beautiful part of the world, because it's an intersection between the Alps and the Plan. We are close to very beautiful towns and very close to the high mountains, very close to the seas, and we have the largest Italian lake right 4 kilometers north of us. So these are already many elements that are making it special. But working with this kind of soil and with this kind of grapes is making this even more special, because we're working with indigenous grape varieties. We're working with a very fascinating kind of soil, because it has a very intriguing history, which is making it very unique. This blend of clay and stones, and the presence of these natural elements like the winds coming from the Alps cold in the morning and reversing in the opposite direction in the afternoon. And those winds are having a totally different temperature compared to the ones which are flowing from the Alps, of course. So combined with indigenous grape variety, this is really making this kind of job easier in a way. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is a very lucky area. So the best we can do, which probably connects to the other part of your question, is expressing this identity in the most bright and clean possible way.
I remember I feel blessed to have walked, the vineyards in the area with you and, asked questions and held discussion around the meaning of the different things that we could witness with our senses, right? Including the wind and the stones and the clay and the grape varieties, et cetera, et cetera. But I remember you showing me some really big stones on your property and talking about the dramatic kind of creation of this landscape as, 10,000 years ago, the glaciers pulling back and creating these deep lakes, which then create the wind and, through their own ecosystem, and leaving behind not only the clays, but small stones, but in some cases, huge stones that had been deposited that had an origin very, very, miles and miles and miles away in what would maybe be, Switzerland now, right? Yep. And so it's a very dramatic truth, actually, that includes elements that are that are historically local, and also elements that are historically alien, if we can, use that word. And it's fascinating, and it's emotional when you're there.
Oh, yes, very much so. I totally agree with you. And I'm always happy when people visiting this place are having the chance to connect with this emotional sides of the being here. Because, many times being in such a beautiful landscape can bring people not paying attention to what's behind this beautiful landscape, because it's so fulfilling, the lake, the Alps, and the nature, and these hills, that in a way it's already a lot that you're getting. But when you're able to slow down a bit and to connect with different ways of, with different layers of the perception that you can have while you're visiting a place like this, then emotions are engaging. And these emotions for me are very, very important, because I think that this is the layer where I wanted to connect when I invite people to meet our wines and to get close to what we're doing here. Because it's not just what we're doing, but it is how we're doing it, which makes a difference.
I love what you just said, and it definitely connects to some things we're going to talk to a little bit later. But I think that your orientation really belies your existence as an artist, right? That you value the emotions that the people who interact with your wine and your territory experience. And I definitely find your wines to be emotional. And that brings me well to the next question, which is, I guess, so from a straightforward point of view, I want to talk about how Lugana wine is emotional, in a sense, both in its youth, potentially. What do you want to tell people about that emotional experience of Lugana DOC wine in its youth, and then maybe also as it develops? Because we know that Lugana wine really can age very well. So what is the unique experience of pleasure?
Yeah, honestly, it was something that really surprised us producers a few years ago when we started noticing that those old bottles of Lugana that we were finding in some corners of our wineries were delivering really surprising results, not just by chance. So it was not a specific vintage which was able to show that a Lugana with over 10 years spent in a bottle was still able to tell something interesting to the person who was opening that bottle. We started noticing that this potential was in the variety and in the combination, of course, between the variety, the kind of soil, the microclimate, and the way that this combination of things is interpreted by the producers. And then we became a little bit more conscious that what was known to be a great wine to drink young when it's fresh is actually hiding a potential which was very, very important to explore. And so we began to, first of all, to keep some more bottles away so that we could open them after a few years to read how they developed during that time, and then we became more conscious about the fact that we could save some wine, or better, identify some specific vineyards and keep those grapes apart, making a separate winemaking, less focused on being able to deliver a wine ready in a few months, but allowing them to have all the time which is needed to become more consistent and focused. And that was the time when we Lugana producers became aware of the importance of showing whenever we can that Lugana is a wine which is not afraid of time, which is actually a wine in which time plays a very, very important and positive role, which is sometimes difficult to show when you have a wine, a white wine especially, which is able to be interesting even after 6 or 8 months after the harvest. You wouldn't expect that, but this is what Turbiana is able to deliver.
So, Luca, I have my own experience of this. As you know, I've told you this story, but I'll share this story here on the podcast. That when you came to teach the class at the enology school where I was teaching at the time, some of the bottles didn't get used, and a couple years later, maybe it was like 5 years later, I was teaching an advanced course on Italian wines, and I was looking through my my cellar to figure out what wines to use. And I found a bottle of the Menesasso, which is your top cru. And I think the vintage was 2009, if that sounds about right, that what you brought to us. And literally, it was probably 2017 when I was teaching and pulled this bottle out. So here we are 8 years later, right? I opened it in class, not kind of knowing what to expect. And it was so surprising and moving. And everybody just was fascinated with this wine, an appellation that no one in the classroom had ever heard of before. And here we have a wine that's almost 10 years old that was just so energetic and so, it had still a lot of brightness and youthfulness to it, and yet layers of complexity that were beginning to, tertiary characteristics that were beginning to really own themselves, so to speak. And one of the things that I found fascinating about tasting this older wine is that Torbiana ends up having some, although it's a neutral, non-aromatic grape variety, there was a kind of a petrol quality that some people would associate with aged Riesling, and also then some similarities to the way that white Bourgogne wines age, actually, and Chardonnay. Two of course, the world's favorite wines to cellar, right? And of course, Torbiana is its own character. But sometimes when we compare lesser known wines to, wines that everybody in the world automatically values, it helps people to make an association. So I don't mean to take away your identity by making those comparisons, but instead I hope to augment them, because it really was true, and a wonderful experience. So I would say, if that was my experience 9 years after your harvest, I could go another 9 or 10 and find out what's going to happen next. I think that we would find something good. I don't think the wine would be dead in 20 years at all.
No, at all. And thank you for making those connections with, to be compared to such important appellations and grape varieties, which have, they concentrate such a long experience from many producers in many different areas. We are very small. We are very small. So to be compared, or not compared, but connected to those is just something which can just make a Lugano producer very happy and proud. So thank you for that. And the thing that is that began to happen a few years ago, I would say like 15 years ago, was that after finding that those Lugano wines which had been produced by thinking that they were going to be served after, well, let's say in 2 years after the production. After that, we noticed how well and how surprisingly they were able to grow in a bottle. We began to be more confident and to, as I was saying, to produce specific Lugano wines that could have more, not just structure, but energy to face more years to come. And now we have the Lugano wines, especially those under the specific character of the DOC, which is Lugano Riserva, which are showing this. They are still as a very small part of the full production of the appellation, but they are able to bring the name Lugano in those places where the expectation over a white wine, which has more than 5, 6, 7 years, is very, very high. And I think that, as you say, having a very small production area and a totally obscure grape variety is, at this time, is making them even more interesting, because we are living in the times, at least I feel I've been living the times where talking about an unknown grape variety was like saying, okay, if it is unknown, it means that it doesn't deserve to be known. So until a few years ago, talking about something which is not famous, or a small indigenous variety, a small production, was not gaining a lot of interest, was not attracting for many people in Italy and out of Italy. I thought that since a few years, this has changed dramatically in a very positive way, where when you talk about something which is not known as a wine production area, an appellation, or a grape variety, usually there's the audience which reacts like saying, "Oh, that's interesting," and gives you the chance to show what you are producing, has been growing a lot. And I think that this has a lot to do with what you guys are doing, because you are creating people who are more confident about their own taste. And this is what we need to preserve the identity of the small productions, and to, as winemakers, to be allowed to push the limits a little bit higher of what we're doing.
Thank you, Luca. I love that you make that connection between people like me, educators, and people like you, producers, because we really are engaged in a collaborative work together. And that's how I see it. That's how I see my work. And I know that the other ambassadors who are on this, listening to this interview, feel the same way. And so I love that you just call out right away that we're in this together, because we are. And one of the things that you said actually makes me want to skip to a question that I was going to ask a little later. And this kind of gets to the heart of something broader about Italian wine and its bounty of unique grape varieties. We talk about Turbiana, lesser known grape variety, and often people, especially students and scholars and educators, like to simplify as much as possible the reality around all these grape varieties. But I personally think that's that oversimplification around grape varieties is a disservice to the identity of the unique wines crafted from them. And I'm going to say why. Turbiana is considered to be genetically identical to Verdicchio, which is better known. And in fact, in the WSET, in the Wine and Spirit Education Trust curriculum on level 2, they spend a whole, I have my slide decks. We get a whole slide for Verdicchio, which really shocked me. But that tells us how important Verdicchio from the Marche is important to the British market, in fact. And yet, if you asked people in the marketplace what they think of Turbiana, they might not be able to say. However, the genetic expression of this grape is so different. And I would like to posit, as a historian, my understanding that probably this grape variety was born very close to Lugana and not in the Marche and its indigenous home. And that farmers from the Veneto in the probably 15th or 16th century after the Black Plague, when they were migrating and fleeing essentially problems in their own home, traveled down to the Marche and brought this grape variety with them, where it found a new home to express itself completely differently. What we know about Vitis vinifera on all its varieties is that it is able to express its genetics differently based on the place that it's grown. And so it doesn't really matter that the genetics are the same. And that's why I say those oversimplifications are not very useful to us to understand identity, right? So I know that's a lot that I've just said, but you're working with several different grape varieties that have this complex story. You have Turbiana, which has another, relatives, I'll call them, in other parts of Italy. And you have another grape variety that you work with in your small appellation, San Martino della Battaglia, and that you call Tucchi. Can you tell us a little bit about this question mark? What is Tucchi?
And thank you. Well, I deeply admire Tanya, you and those like you are so much able to connect all what happens between the history of winemaking and grape varietals and all the migrations. It's always beautiful to listen to these things, and so thank you for taking the time to study and to give those important things back to us. So yes, beside Turbiana, well, first of all, Selva Capuzza is placed in a spot 4 kilometers south of Legada, where we are lucky to be in a small place where the three main appellations of the area, they overlap. And for many years, this was a little bit confusing for me because I was saying, okay, what are we? So are we Lugana? Are we San Martino della Battaglia? Are we Garda Classico? Then I think that I understood that the reason why these three appellations overlap here, it's probably showing the goodness of the land or the position we're at, because essentially I can choose to grow Turbiana, to have Lugana, or to grow Tuqui, to have San Martino della Battaglia, or to grow the combination of the four red grapes of the Lombardy. Well, consider that we are in Lombardy as a region. Lugana is 90% in Lombardy and 10% in Veneto region, and we are on the Lombardy side. And here we have these three appellations, which are made by 6 different grape varieties, 2 whites and 4 reds. And so I began to feel a little bit different after I got to the point that this concentration of appellations is actually showing that we are in a very interesting area. And this has been important for me when I started to work in my family's company when I was something more than 20. And I was looking for motivation. It was very hard for me at the beginning. The wine business was totally different 30 years ago. And the things we're talking about were, I don't know, science fiction at that time. We were not even close to this kind of level of discussing about the quality of wines, the identity, and so on. But realizing about how interesting it was, this area, made me think about the first concept that is behind what we do at Selva Capuzza. We grow just our indigenous varieties. We don't have international varietals, not because we don't think they're good, but because we are lucky to be in a spot where we have our own indigenous varieties, an old blend which was probably created like 200 years ago, 300 years ago, which is the red blend behind the Garda Classico appellation. And so this was so important for me to say, okay, we at Selva Capuzza, we are focused on that. 3 appellations, 6 different grape varieties. And then it came all what followed in terms of the way that, so the how, not just the what, but the how you work on these varietals. But getting back to the Tuqui and the San Martino della Battaglia, that's a beautiful story that kept me awake for many, many, many nights, because at the beginning of my experience in the wine business, the San Martino della Battaglia was an appellation which was risking to disappear. So from being an appellation which was having almost the same quantity of vineyards, the same hectares of Lugana, it was risking to disappear because I don't know how long it takes, but after a few years that no one is producing an appellation, the appellation is considered to be gone and it gets cancelled. And so for me, when I was a kid, I remember that the San Martino della Battaglia, which at that time was containing the word Tokai, was the king of the wines of this area. For me, to save this from disappearing was the first challenge. And it was an area in which I tried to put all my knowledge at play. And this is where I found the connection between me as a musician and me as a winemaker, with the first ideas on sustainability, because Campo del Soglio, which is our San Martino della Battaglia DOC, has been the testing area for the sustainability concepts, which I learned for the first time 30 and something years ago from a guitar string producer, which name is Daddario. And so the San Martino della Battaglia was protected. We produced it even when nobody wanted to drink it, because at that time, as I was saying, not being known was meaning not to be important, and being worth to be known. And until the 2008, when the rule of the European Community, the decision that made them protect the name of a production area, which is Tokai in Hungary, made them decide that that was worth preserving and not the name of the grape variety Tokai. And this created a very weird reaction in Italy, which I strongly criticize, because from trying to solve a problem of confusion between the Tokai as a wine production area in Hungary and the Tokai as a grape variety in Italy, instead of making it easier, I think we overcomplicated it, because when in Friuli they decided to give the synonym Friulano, they created the beginning of a stronger confusion, because the same grape variety was changing the name depending on the region. And so Friulano is in Friuli, Thai is in Veneto, and in 2008, we were the only producer of San Martino della Battaglia. So the Ministry of Agriculture didn't decide for a synonym which could allow us to describe on the back label, this wine is produced by this grape variety. So just for fun, I decided to put a question mark on the back label. And the first question mark was really very, very subtle, because it was something that it was between me and all this weird Italian way of managing this problem. And but this question mark attracted a lot of attention on the appellation, and people began to talk about this wine with no name, this wine which had been deprived of the grape variety name. And as a result, more producers in the area began to produce San Martino della Battaglia again. And so after, I would say, probably 20 years of a production which was going more and more down, after 2009, 2010, the production of San Martino della Battaglia began to rise again, so that now we have 10 producers of this appellation. For me, this has been one of the most beautiful things which can happen to a wine producer who is concerned about giving something back to the land, which is allowing him to do his job.
I love how you interact with the kind of the definition of identity and ask the question, who are we? What do we do with the things that we know about ourselves, right? How do we communicate that? Those are, I think, brave and important questions to ask. I love to observe the way that you pose those questions. And to me, that is culture making, right? Engaging in the evolution of culture of your place. So thank you for doing that. And this, I'm going to just make a little statement and then ask you another question that I think connects to all these, to your approach. But I want to just point out that Luca's wines, in my estimation, each of the different wines represents some kind of different goal. Experimentation. You have experimental wines, which could fall into the natural wine category. That would be Nulla. We don't have time to talk about all these wines, but I just want to name them. Humanitarianism as one of your goals, and that would be through your Garda Classico, for your red wine Donat.
Yeah.
And cultural stewardship, which we've been talking about through your work in San Martino della Battaglia, and through the bottling of your Cru Lugana wines and Lugano Riserva, right? I don't think we have time to talk about all the wines, but maybe you want to just tell us a little bit about the Donat. I think that's an exciting story. The humanitarianism being the goal that is expressed through that wine.
Yeah, and you know how much difficult it is sometimes for me to talk about that, because
I've seen a few tears on your cheek.
Yeah. Yes. So because again, when I was a kid, well, first of all, if you come visit the area, you will for sure notice an important landmark, which is a tall tower, which was built at the end of the 18th century in 1889, 30 years after the Battle of San Martino Solferino. The Battle of San Martino Solferino has been one of the most important battles for the unification of Italy, and it was unplanned. An unplanned fight against 285,000 soldiers of three different armies. There was Franz Joseph from Austria and Hungary on one side, and Vittorio Emanuele II and Napoleon on the other side, who were together trying to push the Austrians out of northern Italy. And this battle was so cruel, so heavy that, well, someone say 30,000, some others say 40,000 people were killed at the same day, 24th of June, 1859. But the thing is that during the 6 months after the battle, other 40,000 people died of the injuries. There was a man whose name was Henri Dunant, who was here by chance because he was just trying to talk to Napoleon for some personal business. And he arrived here the day after this massacre. By seeing what was happening, you can imagine this disaster, this human disaster in the middle of nothing, because at that time this was just an area for some farms and some crops, but there were no hotels and all the things that you find here. This man began to think that after a soldier has been injured, he has to be considered like your brother. So from this idea, he developed the concept that brought to the creation of the International Red Cross. The thing that almost everybody visiting that tower, I remember when I was a kid, was getting out of that tower knowing everything about who won, who was at the head of which army, and what did the soldiers do, and so on. But they didn't know that thing created, in my point of view, one of the most revolutionary ideas of the humankind. Because in 1863, Henri Dunant was able to create the institution of the Red Cross, which was putting human beings in the center without regarding any race, any rank in the army, without regarding any age, anything. And I think that we have to take the chance for the few bottles of wine that we are producing to always remember this, because this was done single person, without internet, without telephone, without anything. And we all know what is the importance of this institution. And so 20 years ago, probably something more, I tried to get in touch with the International Red Cross in Geneva, asking for the permission to name a wine after Henri Dunant. And they told me, look, we are the International Red Cross, so you should ask to the foundation, Redunant. I've been trying to get in touch with the foundation, but at that time, the International Red Cross was not considered as it is now, or since 10, 15 years. And so nobody replied to me. Now, I would say that since 5 years, we have been allowed to have the original signature of our Redunant on the first document in which he has been writing about this idea on our label. And this signature was offered to us from the Historical Museum of the International Red Cross, which is just a few kilometers from here.
I love this bottle. It's such a beautiful wine, and we could talk about this story so much more, but we are kind of coming to the end of time. And there were other things that everybody who's listening, we could come on again and keep talking, and so you can tell that there's so many fun things to discover here. The last question I was going to ask was about weaving your philosophy as an artist and a composer into your work, but I think we've already started to feel that from you. I want to just mention something that I hopefully will talk about in another interview, the concept of the sleep concert, or inviting people to sleep in your vineyards in a passive, experience. That's another kind of amazing, beautiful thing Luca's doing. But I have just one question I'm able to ask you before we leave. So I'm just alluding to some of those other exciting things that could be discussed. This is important to me as a feminist and as a person who knows your exquisite daughter, who's the same age as my son. She's followed in your footsteps as a musician. She's studying music. But our wine industry, of course, is super male dominated and needs innovative, creative women. Do you have any idea that your daughter might also follow in your footsteps in your wine business?
Well, she lives in the middle of vineyards, and I did my best to make her have the most serene approach with wine, so that I didn't want her to feel like this is just a job, or this is, I really tried to do my best to make it very neutral. And I never invited her to drink a wine. I tried to understand from her eyes if she was curious to smell it and to sip it. And then, of course, I was open, but I never tried to push her to do that. I've asked this question, Tanya, during the summer, and I've realized that at this time, she is very much engaged by music. But this is what happened to me. But now I'm 56 almost, and I'm still doing wine. I'm also doing music. But if you asked me that question when I was 17, I wouldn't have told you that I was going to be a wine producer. I think that there is still time, and my job as a parent, as a father, is to sustain her and to help her to listen to herself, and I will do my best to support any kind of decision that she will take, and I will never make her feel embarrassed if she will decide not to do that.
I love that. You're a good father. But I can tell, the way that in the summertime she walks barefoot always in the vineyards, that her connection is strong. So, we don't have to force our children into anything. That calling will happen to her maybe through the soles of her feet. We'll see. Oh, yeah. It's been so wonderful to share with you today, and share actually with the world today, this interview with you, Luca. Thank you so much. I look forward to our next conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for your time, because I really appreciate that all of you have been spending the time with me and with Tanya. Thank you, Tanya, because you are a very important source of energy for me, for what we're doing here, and I hope that more wine producers will have the luck to meet people like you who can really push them to be brave and to not always go for the easy way, but sometimes dedicate some of their time and energies to go for the to the not always easy directions that a winemaker can decide to follow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, guys, for your time. I'm sorry I have to cut this because we've been more than 1 hour, but it was really a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I really want to hear more about the music and wine, and maybe we can do a part 2. Who knows? Well, okay, so maybe I'll let you know, guys. I have to ask Stevie because I really look forward to the second part. So anyway, yes, and before I end this call. So the next Clubhouse is going to be on Thursday with Elena Barattini, and she will be interviewing Christian Speconia from Friuli. So goodbye and ciao, everyone. Thanks for listening. Ciao.
Thank you.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.